Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
Still says I'm muted. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strange World, where the truth is often stranger than fiction. I'm your host, Mark Sargent, the creator of Flat Earth Clues, which propose that all of us are living inside a Truman Show enclosed structure, thousands of miles wide. My wingman for the show is Jonathan from Jersey, and I don't know how you got in the building. There's got to be at least 20 field agents on the ground floor, but how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Let me just take this black mask off my head here. You kind of kidnapped me to get out here, but no. Thank you for letting me be on the premiere of the show tonight. I'm really excited.
Yeah, same here. And a big shout out to Truth Frequency Radio for giving us this opportunity. It's fantastic. I was super flattered. You know, I'd done a couple interviews on their network, and they contacted me and said, "Yeah, let's do something." So here we are on Strange World. And before we get into it too much, because most people, they don't know our relationship. Are we friends? Are we lifelong friends? Do we have a secret marriage? What's the deal? How did you get in touch with me, man?
And it's funny you say that. Anything's possible in today's world, so no judgment there. But no, that includes the conspiracy circles and everything else. I forgot what forum I was in, but I stumbled upon a link to your Flat Earth Clues. And prior to that, I'd never given it any credence. I always just thought, Flat Earth and then whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then I see this video by you. I didn't know who you were. Just showing these slides and saying, okay, I'm just asking you to question this. And at the very end, you put your name and your number. And I think it was after. Oh, and the other thing is, your videos were very concise. Like, you weren't just up and giving people a talk face to face.
Yeah.
You let people come to their own conclusions, and rightfully so. And so at the end, you're like, give a call. So after 5 videos, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna give this guy a call. What the heck? And you go and answer the phone, and I'm just like, all right, and I told you my whole thing. I never believed in this. Yeah. But what you says makes me question. And then we talked a few times since then.
Yeah.
And I saw this thing develop over the past month, in that all of when you go on YouTube and you sign in, it says you may like. So because I had seen your videos, all these other videos started coming up, you may like. And I started seeing these people like Eric Dubay and Matt Boylan and all these different people that I'd never heard of before.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, okay, I got to study. I got to at least question, because these people put time into this, and some of them are so well done with scientific facts and history, and so yeah. So that's where So I've only known you maybe, I guess, a month and a half. I don't know how long you had these videos up.
Yeah. The first clue went up on February 10th, so not much longer after that. And then you were the only person that found the secret message in in one of my videos. I would have thought for sure I would have gotten more, but you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was talking to you about that, and it's funny because I sent it anonymously. I didn't want you, I wanted you to freak out a little bit about getting a package in the mail.
Yeah.
But
Wait. For the people that haven't figured it out, for the sorry, for the people that listened to my videos, they're going to sleep listening to my videos. Like just putting the headphones on and going to bed. They didn't realize that I put a text message after video 10 that said "send cookies." Because people said, "Oh, can I send money? Can I send this? Can I buy anything?" And so I said, "You know what? Send cookies." And I put my actual home address at the end of video 10, but I didn't say it. And you were the only one that actually sent cookies. So yeah, I got that anonymous package in the mail, and you and I were talking, and I got on the phone with you, and I go, "Yeah, I got this box of cookies," right? And you're like going, "You're not going to eat that, are you?"
yeah, I'm like, you don't know if it's poison. You don't know who's sending that to you, and I'm trying to get you all nervous and paranoid.
Yeah.
But then I had to finally tell you, like, hey, listen, it was me. Enjoy them. But no, it was my show of thanks and gratitude for putting up this entertaining video, and you did. But I thought you really said it. So really, there's another examination, I guess, like you said, of people that listen, as opposed to comprehending what they're seeing or hearing, and then people actually watching the videos. And I'm watching it from my frame. It's like, did he really say send cookies? All right. So yeah. So thank you. So yeah.
Yeah,
right.
and because of that, fantastic. You're now a co-host on a radio show. That's a lesson for all those people out there that don't pay attention to the details. If you send me cookies, I'm going to acknowledge you in some way. I'll probably do a shout out in some of my video text.
See that? That's almost like those raffles or something, or it's like send in so many box tops and you win a car, and people are like, who's going to really get a car for 1,000 box tops, cereal box tops? And there it is, a brand new car.
Exactly. So normally we would go into flat Earth stuff at the moment, and for those of you who haven't Googled flat Earth clues, and you don't have to make it one word or two words or three words, it's going to show up. We may cover that a little bit of at the end, especially my identity theft and impersonation, which has happened recently. But for right now, what I thought I'd do something for the first show. I thought I used to do something a little different because, even the conspiracy world, conspiracy world's full of, a lot of doom and gloom and, everything's horrible. It's the opposite of everything is awesome. And what I thought I'd do is even conspiracy people want to be entertained. So I have a story that, which is why this show is going to be called in the title, it's going to be called Fireworks. And I have a story that is not really conspiracy based, but it is stranger than fiction, so I think it applies here. And I think you'll dig it, man.
Cool.
So, little preface behind it. For most people that don't know, fireworks in this country really didn't change much from like the Civil War all the way till the 1960s. From the 1860s to the 1960s, if you're old enough to remember, everything was legal, which, is just amazing. You could have rockets with engines, the size of your arm, and, firecrackers that could, blow up watermelon and all sorts of stuff. Basically, there was the term illegal fireworks didn't exist until 1962. And there was a good reason for that. When they finally, Kennedy put it into effect, it's part of the Child Protection Act of 1962. And the reason he did it is because people were getting injured every once in a while. Let's face it. You get a 4th of July party, which usually, is a lot of. I've probably consumed the most alcohol of any holiday I can think of, except for maybe St. Patrick's Day. And you get a lot of those people, drinking and then handling fireworks. And, we're not talking the safe and sane stuff we have now. We're talking, the dumb and dangerous stuff that they had back then. And, people were getting injured every once in a while. And so it was probably a good idea that they put that act in place. But like most acts, what happens there is, if once you make something illegal, there all of a sudden becomes a black market for it. But this was one of those strange black markets because it was seasonal. So it's kind of like, it's going to be a terrible analogy, but it's kind of like making candy canes illegal, so there's these black market candy cane operations during Christmas, that sort of thing. So not a lot of attention was paid to it. And so I've got to ask you, so what happened was after 1962, basically the federal law made a whole bunch of stuff illegal, but state by state, it really, everyone modified it to their own degree. So like in Colorado, there's very few flying fireworks because it's very, very dry out here and there's a chance of forest fires. But on the East Coast where you are, I imagine quite a bit more is legal, maybe?
That's the thing. I mean, I believe you can still buy them in Pennsylvania now.
Yeah.
I don't know what class or how they fall or how they're designed, but I remember back in the 70s and 80s in the back of Boys Life magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you earned so many points, like one of them was like fireworks packages.
Yeah.
So, and back then kids still had BB guns. I remember gas powered planes. I remember chemical kits that used to destroy my mom's dining room table.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of stuff that you could get, and it was even worse in the 60s. But even up until the 70s and 80s, you could get a lot of stuff which parents would just cringe at now. And
they gave it to us to play with at the same time. It wasn't like, here's some safety goggles, let me show you what to do.
Yeah, yeah. Dennis Leary had a wonderful joke where he's saying, they used to give real bow and arrow sets, to 8-year-olds.
I still have lawn darts. I said to I was cleaning out the shed. My son goes, "What's these?" And I go, "These are lawn darts."
Yeah.
And he's like, "What do you do with them?" I said, "Well, when we were kids, we used to throw them in the air and try not to get hit with them." And he's looking at me like, "Are you kidding?"
Yeah, yeah. Old steel-tipped lawn darts. It's amazing. Yeah. And you'd think, I mean, it's like it's the most horrible idea for a toy ever. Because they're weighted heavy on the bottom. You throw them, they go straight up, and you're staring straight at the sky. I mean, you're just asking for problems. So anyway, so it varies from state to state. So Colorado, very, very tough to do because it's very dry. So you have to buy your fireworks up in Wyoming and then illegally bootleg them down here. But there's nothing to burn up in Wyoming, so the laws are really lax. And I grew up in the Northwest, up near in Seattle, which is really the perfect storm of fireworks territory for several reasons. One was it's because it's so damp. There's 220 overcast days a year there, compared to like the 300 days of sun out here in Colorado. So everything's real damp, so you don't have any worry about fire danger. Plus, there's a lot of open water all over the place. And so I grew up, as a matter of fact, I grew up on a beach on an island, in the Northwest. So it was absolutely the perfect place to do fireworks. So the 4th of July was just a huge, it was 10 times better than it was for Christmas for me. As a matter of fact, if anyone wants to look it up, I lived on Sunlight Beach Road, in case you want to look it up on Google Maps. In fact, since our family doesn't own that house anymore, it's 2566 East Sunlight Beach Road. But you're not going to get any of those Google car things real close. So what would happen is every year since I was like, 11, 12, because most of the houses down there were summer cabins. A lot of the people that lived there were fairly well off. And they would pay me they would write me checks to go to the reservations and get buy fireworks from wherever and put on shows. And so I was doing this since I was like 12, 13 years old. And this, by the way, the other big thing of why the Northwest is big on fireworks is because there are a lot of Native American reservations up there. And I'll just say reservations, I'll make it shorter. There's a lot of reservations up there, a huge Native American population in the Northwest, lots and lots of tribes. And the Native Americans have special exemptions when it comes to things like cigarette tax, alcohol tax, fishing licenses, fishing seasons, that sort of thing. But they're also very, very big on they can sell any type of firework that is sold in any other state. So they're exempt from all the other rules. However, they also sell the under the table stuff, which is what we're going to talk about, which they used to call back in the day. They used to call them cannon crackers, of all things. Yeah,
I'm just laughing here, by the way, because I'm thinking as you're saying all this, I remember so many rooftops. The neighbors used to spray their roofs with the garden hose.
Yeah,
because living in the suburbs and in the tri-state area, you're so close to everybody that there were so many bottle rockets that went off in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And you're talking about things that it sounds like I wish I was a kid in your world.
The 4th of July on the beaches that I grew up on were like a war zone, but everyone was having the greatest time, because if you stood back far enough, it's like, maybe there was some friendly fire here and there, but it was crazy the amount of stuff we do. So the reservations don't sell. They can't sell. Nobody can sell cannon crackers. Basically, you can't make a firecracker bigger than, I don't know. It's a certain grainage of powder. And if you're wondering what's in firecrackers, and I might as well do the quick backstory on this, people say, well, it's like dynamite. No, it's not. It's flash powder. And if you don't know what flash powder is, you have to look up really ancient photography. It's flash powder is the stuff that was put in. If you see those old movies where they're taking those 1800s photographs where they pour that the guy's holding up the big tray above him and it's full of powder, and he goes smile, and there's this big poof of smoke. And, then everybody's, covered in soot. That's what flash powder is. It's photography powder. And the reason why it's called flash powder is because, it creates a very, very, very bright flash, and it burns very, very fast. So it syncs up with the film. And what they figured out is that if you put this powder into any type of container, like a cardboard container, well, there you go. Automatic, M80, M100, it's a big firecracker. And what it's made out of, and I can mention this because you can't buy this stuff anymore. They've closed down the loops on this. It's really just a powdered metal, like powdered aluminum, with an oxidizer like potassium chlorate, and then sulfur to make it not susceptible to static charge. So that's what that's what the reservations would sell these under the counter. And I needed them for the shows because there's lots of people that like pretty stuff, and then there's lots of people that like noisy stuff. And it's really, honestly, it's gender based. Women really, really lean towards the pretty stuff, and then the men, it's like, oh, give me more booms. So that's what we do.
Did you guys have Roman candle fights and all that, and rocket fights?
Oh yeah, we take out rowboats. No, yeah, always rowboats, never with gas engines in them, and have rocket wars and Roman candles. Lots of fun. Again, it seems like harmless fun, and again, it's a guy thing. I know, it's like, what, why would you ever shoot bottle rockets at each other? It's like, because you're playing war. It's safer than BB guns, in my opinion.
And I got to say, it's kind of bittersweet to even talk about this because I have a son who's 11, and he'll never get to enjoy any of this outside of going to Pennsylvania or something. But we had them in our back pockets. I remember having pockets full of firecrackers and black hats and whatever you call them.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, it's totally cool. So what was happening was, as I was getting older, 14, 15, 16, the mature years, I was getting more and more money from these neighbors to do bigger and bigger shows. And I was realizing as I got older, and started sending away in the back of those catalogs you were talking about, that there was simple diagrams on how to make your own fireworks. But, making the pretty stuff was kind of hard and tricky. And yeah, you could make your own rockets, but it was time consuming. So I was making, a lot of my own, M80s, M100s, quarter sticks, half sticks, that sort of thing. So I was making a lot of these, and it was saving me money for the shows. And at the same time, then I could spend more money on other things. And I was learning my craft, basically. And the family was encouraging this. Everyone was like, oh, it's a creative outlet. Just let him do it. As long as he's not getting hurt and as long as he's not doing something irresponsible. It's like, all right. So I was doing this year after year. And then eventually I graduated from high school and went to college. Well, it turns out, they still wanted me to come back and do shows during the summer. So I was, doing my own thing. And I was making some of my own stuff up at college. And one weekend I got really kind of bored. And I decided to make a whole bunch of 6-inch by 1-inch firecrackers, for the show. And I made way too many. And I realized that, literally I had probably 2 grocery bags full of 6-inch by 1-inch firecrackers. And I, it was overkill. You're in college, you get stuck in a rut and it's like, all right, what am I going to do with these things? And so all of a sudden the idea, I'll just take it down to one of the smaller reservations and I'll go take it in there and I'll trade it across for rockets and stuff like that. So, here I am driving down there. It's the reservation and I'm walking up to this, normally you're walking away from the stands with stuff. And I'm walking to the stands with big grocery bags full. And they must
have looked at you with a raised eyebrow, like, what's this guy doing?
Yeah, there's like, what is this guy doing? Like in full public view,
right.
in front of everybody. It's like, no, set these big bags down in front of the counter. I say, hey, can I trade these across for rockets? Right. because I need some more rockets for my show coming up in a couple of weeks. And they look at me, and then they look in the bag, and they're looking at me, and they're kind of like looking at the merchandise underneath the counter. They're going, and this I was making some pretty decent stuff back then, and they go, "Well, we'll give you $5 a piece for these, like right now."
Right.
And I'm going, wait, I can get money for this? And
And not to be rude, I don't want to start off being controversial, but this is in their blood, literally. I mean, they're into trading and everything like that.
yeah.
This is like the guy said, this is a good trade.
It is a good trade. It is. It was like, this is a great deal. It's like, but they didn't understand. It's like, no, I want rockets. But they insisted. So they gave me $1,000 cash right there. And then I had to turn around and bought rockets from them. And it's like, it was crazy. But as God is my witness, I honestly never would have thought that I could do this to make money. It was like, always for the show, always for the art, and all of a sudden it's like the profit thing all of a sudden kicked in. It's like, wait, because college students are notoriously poor, no matter where you are. No college students for the most part, have a ton of disposable income. So it's like going, holy smokes. So, okay. What do I do? So anyway, I do the show, I do the last show I ever did. Down on Useless Bay Beach, which is right next to Sunlight Beach. And I'm going to mention this because it'll come up later. For somebody else's house, and another rich group of people. And then went back up to college, and I immediately started thinking about the next season. Started thinking, okay, what am I going to do here?
I'm picturing you, by the way, looking like Nicolas Cage in Lord of War, and you got like stacks of money you're counting out on the bed, like you're just increasing your net worth. And
yeah, absolutely. I was thinking that, because at this point now my complete mindset had changed. It wasn't because it was like, okay, I don't really care. It's not that I didn't care about the shows anymore, but they took a back seat. It's like, okay, how far can I take this? That was my idea, and I was in the perfect position. I was in the perfect state. I was in the perfect college to do it. It was Western Washington University up near the Canadian border, and it's next to a whole bunch of reservations. And it was, and as we go on, you'll understand it just gets worse and worse. So at that point, I founded the Brimstone Fireworks Company, and
it's a good name.
Yeah, it was pretty good at the time. And what I decided to do was I wanted to see if there was so I looked up, the first thing I did was research. I went to the library and started looking up the law. It's like, okay, what is legal, what isn't legal? And that's when I found out about, the 1962 Child Protection Act. And I found out about the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, because they're the ones that handle this sort of stuff. It's they're a special branch. So the ATF handles firearms. They handle people that are smuggling cigarettes, but they also handle illegal fireworks, and that's one of their smaller things because it's they've tightened down year after year. So I wanted to see what the penalties were along those lines, and so I did all my homework, and I said, you know what, I think I can do this. So what I did was I found a loophole. in the rules. At least I thought it was a loophole, which was a Class B user-limited single purchase only permit, which allowed me to buy quantities of materials that I could either Class B fireworks or materials to allow me to make Class B fireworks. And what I did was I thought, okay, because money talks. What I'll do is I'll make copies of this permit, photocopies of the permit, not going to send out the original one, and send it with cash in advance to all the companies that I needed the stuff from. And then I got investors. I got a few guys, that were around in college and said, look, you want to make some money here, promised them, I think, at least double, maybe triple their investment. And that's what we decided to do. So everything was formed, and we've got 2 minutes to break, but I'll go into the details of exactly what we ordered before we get there. So we went all out. So and I had to buy everything from different companies all around the country. So, like, for example, this will give you an idea of the logistics involved here. So from a fuse company out of Idaho, Pocatello, Idaho, I bought 6 miles of fuse.
Oh wow.
From a company out in Ohio.
No, wait, did that come on like a spool about the size of what the telephone company rolls out?
Yeah, they were wooden spools of, I think, a quarter mile to a half a mile long. It was.
I know what 500 feet of speaker wire looks like, and you're saying 6 miles.
Yeah, they're big. Yeah, I had a freaking, this is that high quality green Canon fuse.
Okay.
I bought from I couldn't make this up if I tried, from a company out in Ohio. It's called Acme Tube Company.
Wait. Is this the same company that Wile E. Coyote
Yeah,
orders
it's the
from?
Wile E. Coyote, the Acme.
Why didn't you just buy the dynamite from them and just be done with it?
No, because all they make is cardboard tubes. That's what
Okay.
these guys do, is make cardboard tubes. But it was the Acme Tube Company. I bought 40,000 casings. It came in a container truck. And then the chemicals were from a company called KSI out of Colorado. And I bought, I think, I don't know, less than a ton. But it was about, I think, 1,500 pounds worth of chemicals.
Wow.
And all this stuff came to the college at one time. And I had to send all my friends out in trucks, to go to like the truck depot to get all the to get all the materials, and then we had to take it back to Bellingham and put it into dry storage. And so we had all this stuff coming in, and we had 15 seconds left. All this stuff coming in. Be right back with more fireworks.
Like a cancer that's silently spreading.
Agent for Truth with Joe Bannister.
Sundays on Truth Frequency Radio.
Yes, them cracking up. Yes, them rocking up. Yes, them cracking up. Yes, them cracking up. Ay, 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 ay.
Welcome back to Strange World. I'm Mark Sargent with Jonathan, and this show is called Fireworks. So What we were just talking about was a whole bunch of materials were coming back to Bellingham, Washington to start up the Brimstone Fireworks Company, including 6 miles of fuse, 40,000 casings, less than a ton of powder, and only there was a problem. I had loaded it all into a storage locker, and I had no workforce. I had no way to make this stuff. So,
by the way, Mark, what year was this now?
This would have been 1990. This is going in the Wayback Machine. So all this stuff was legal. You could. So I was fudging the rules a little bit. It wasn't completely legal, but at least you could still get this stuff. Whereas it is much tougher to get it now.
Gotcha.
So, what I did was I needed a labor force, and luckily for me, I happened to be a student manager at the food service at the Food King, and as everyone knows, college students are paid absolutely horrible wages for just about anything they do, and everyone was complaining to me. So I was the one that was basically scheduling the staff. And everybody that I heard constant complaining. It's like, oh, I'm not making enough money, and I'm not making enough money. Well, I could only hear that so long before all of a sudden that light bulb clicked onto my head, and so I came up with the idea of a safe way of hiring students to do my grunt work for me, and then I would pay them later. So what I initially did was I said, okay, so basically I came up with the whole Henry Ford assembly line process. So I said, and believe it or not, most of the people that signed on to this were women, which was really, really weird. I mean, they're good with their hands, repetitive tasks. So I would like give a couple girls some heavy duty scissors and like say half a mile of fuse, and I say cut these into 4-inch pieces.
Now, were they wearing like breather masks and bathing suits like you see in?
No,
you weren't walking around like Scarface, right?
No, this was college, man.
I'm sorry.
This was innocent.
I'm sorry.
And plus they weren't dealing with any of the powder stuff. So all this stuff that they were doing was completely safe and I don't think controversial in any way.
Black powder. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There you go. Yeah. So, so I'd give a bunch of girls some scissors and some fuse, and then I'd buy some little high-speed drills, and those like tiny Dremel drills, and I'd say, okay, drill holes in the sides of these casings, and just fill, and then another one I'd say, okay, take this glue gun and put this little cardboard end tube in the end and glue the end in. And so there was this weird process of me driving around campus. It's amazing I got any schoolwork done at all. Driving around campus with these bags of, these garbage bags full of casings in various stages of production. I'd be driving them around and, I dump them onto, people's, doorsteps, and I'd say, do this. And the pitch was this. I said, okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to pay you 3 times minimum wage, which is a great deal for any college student. But there's a catch. And you can keep your own hours. You keep your own time card. It's on the honor system. But the catch is you do not get paid until after the 4th of July. And they all went for it. I mean, very few people turned me down, to the point where I had, I think at one point, 32 people working for me on campus. Yeah, it was crazy, the amount of how well it was working. The only thing that I had to do was, so once I went through this big assembly line process of cutting the fuse and drilling the holes and putting the casings in and gluing the casings, eventually it had to come back to me, and somebody had to put the powder in it. And I did that at my house. And my roommates, I'm sure, to this day just cringe. It's like that we just didn't blow up because I had hundreds of pounds of chemicals in my room.
I said Nicolas Cage before. I think I meant Erwin Mainway. Does that ring a bell?
Oh man, what's that?
Is that obscure?
Yeah, that is.
SNL, bag of glass, that kind of deal.
Yeah, it was that bad, man. The insanity. I don't know what I was thinking. Remember, I wasn't doing drugs in college. I mean, I wasn't really even drinking that much. So whatever was, my head, I was on a mission. I was absolutely so focused on this to make this work. And so what I had was, like, in my room, I had fans. I had my windows open and fans literally pointing out the window. And every once in a while, I'd have to hit the top of the fans to knock the dust off, knock the flash powder dust.
Wow.
And every time I did it, I was thinking, oh, please don't let the dust go in the engine. Please don't let it go in the motor. And I did. So I loaded literally every casing, all 40,000 by myself.
No, wait a minute. People, back then, everybody smoked too. I mean, how did you know, like, nobody would come in lighting a cigarette and there would be a flashover over the whole room?
Well,
did you have a sign out on the door? Or?
No. But my roommates, luckily, okay, neither of my roommates smoked, and I knew their girlfriends didn't smoke. But that's an excellent point, because had any of them smoked, and I had a girlfriend, which we'll bring in a second here, not on the phone, but into the story. Who did smoke. She was like a big clove cigarette girl, and I think she knew better that because flash powder is so susceptible to flame,
right.
and if you don't add sulfur to the mix, it's susceptible to static electricity.
I was going to say, can it also go off by too much compression? Not
compression, but potential shock.
Okay.
Because it's metal. It's a metal powder. So it's like you wouldn't want to grind it up in anything. It would be a bad idea. But we'll get
bench grinder.
Yeah, bench grinder. Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to. Yeah, flash powder is not. I mean, it's not. It'll injure you. It won't kill you, but it's very, very hot. It's a very, very combustible material.
And by the way, and just to let people know, and this is the first time I'm hearing this story, because we've talked about a lot of things over the past few weeks, specifically around the flat Earth. But we did crazy things as kids too, over on this end, over here on the East Coast in Jersey.
Yeah.
Just not this big. But go ahead.
Well, I know, and that's why, and I've told this story a few times over the years, and people say, "Oh, you got to tell this story on the air if you're going to do it." And it's like, "All right, I'm fine. I'll do this once." But yeah, so yeah, the insanity just kept building. You think it's insane now? No, it gets worse. So I also had a problem, and that was I had to make a presence into the other reservations. So yeah, I could take those grocery bags up to that small time place, Tulalip Indian Reservation near Anacortes, Washington. But there were some big reservations down the south of Seattle and north of Seattle, notably Tulalip and Puyallup, some big tribes. But unfortunately, I'm about as white as they get. I'm tall, blonde, green eyes. Even my eyebrows are blonde.
You
And
sound like a tall white that they see in Area 51 or something.
no, but I get, it's like, oh, what Aryan youth movement did he come from? One of those things. And plus my hair is always super, super short. So, and the reservations are very, very suspicious because the ATF will routinely send people in to see if they can, smoke out some, people that are selling illegal fireworks. But the search and seizure laws are different in reservations than they are in normal places. If you have a corner fireworks store, the ATF can go in and do whatever you want. But if you're going on reservation land, that's a whole nother thing. So but there's a flip side of that, and that is the reservations are very suspicious. Luckily for me, I had a girlfriend. I'm going to name her on air.
Oh, boy.
Her name is Ashanti, which is an interesting name considering she's part Native American, and she was, I think, part Cherokee. If I'm not mistaken. She'll probably crucify me for screwing up that if that was not the case. But she looked very ethnic along those lines, and she was also very confident. Came from a theater background, and super. She could play a role about as good as anybody. And so she's, when I said, "Hey, you on board? You want to do this?" By this time, she had already been in every part of the process. She's like, "Oh yeah, I'm absolutely in on this." So we would go to the reservations, and I'd have to stay in the car. That's how bad it was.
Wow.
And then she would go around, and I think she was 20, and approach the stands and these different tribal guys and say, "Hey, look, we're trying to sell some product here. Are you willing?" And she was basically the one that got me in. Right. She got me into these places. And
by the way, did you have a cool Indian name like Dances with Sparklers or anything like that?
running with bombs? No, I didn't. They used just about every horrible. I was a cliche to them.
Okay,
it was like I was like this dumb white guy that was like one of these days he's going to get caught. He has no idea what he's doing.
Instead of stands with a fist, it stands with a stump because he blew it off.
Yeah,
right, go ahead.
And, by the time we get to the end of this, you're going to wonder how I have 10 fingers and 10 toes, or a head for that matter, because there's no way I should have gotten away with what I did. So we do all this stuff. And so she got me into there. She got me into the reservations, and I start pitching the stuff. Excuse me. And everything's going great. But there's a couple side things that are happening. One is because I've got so many employees, 32 employees across campus, including a pretty good chunk of the Western Washington University men's track team. And I don't even know how they came on the payroll. They just all of a sudden showed up one day and said, "Hey, can we get some work?" It's like, okay, yeah, sure, fine. It's like I never even went inside their house. I just dropped it off on their deck.
You're starting to make this sound like the guys that sell bags of oranges in L.A. Like, just everybody had access to your fireworks.
They did. They did pretty much, and to the point where some of my employees started going off on their own and making their own stuff.
Okay.
And they're saying, "Hey, can we get paid in tubes and fuse and powder instead of money?" And I was going, "Yeah, sure," because they could make more money that way, but they'd have to sell their own stuff. And it's like, all right, fine. And one of these guys started making, because we were making, okay, and this is a guy thing. This is one of, whose firework is bigger competition type of thing. Because I was making, 1-inch firecrackers and 3-inch firecrackers and 6-inch firecrackers. And then he was going, "Oh yeah, you got to make something bigger than that." So I said, fine. So I ordered from Acme. I ordered some 12-inch by 3-inch casings. and I called them Sonics, and those were pretty big. And I sold them for, I think I sold them for 18, and the reservation sold them for like 60.
They were called Sonics?
Sonic Boom.
Is that because dynamite was already trademarked?
No, no, it was because in the Northwest, the basketball team, excuse me, used to be called the Seattle Supersonics before they moved to Oklahoma City.
Gotcha.
So that's where I kind of stole it from. But I started making these Sonics, and then I'm not kidding you. This guy Wayne Ward, who was working for me, he started doing his own thing. Eventually, he stopped working for me and started making his own stuff. And he came over with like an 18-inch firecracker. And he's going, oh, look at this thing. Imagine what I can, and he went to the reservation and sold that. And then he came back with like a 30-inch, by 7-inch. And he goes, look, I'm calling them dragons. I'm just going, oh, man, this is not good, right? Because now they're starting to make stuff that's probably not very very sane at all. So, what did I do? I said, well, I called up Acme and I said, okay, what do you got bigger than a 30-inch casing?
Wow.
And he goes, I'll send you a 36-incher. It's the biggest red one I have. And what we're talking about here is, for those of you who've watched the really big, pretty displays up in, New York or any major city, they shoot them out of these cardboard mortar tubes. And these tubes have to be made from somewhere. Basically, if you own a tube company, you can make a tube in just about any size you want. But these were already pre-done. So I made this 36-inch firecracker. I was 36-inch by 8-inch, and I called it The Last Word. Put a big stencil on the side of it, called it The Last Word. And being that I was feeling generous that year, I gave it to my 15-year-old cousin as a Christmas present. And my uncle immediately took it away from him and then traded it to one of his car dealer friends. And that came back later, but that's a whole nother story for another time. However, the king of all firecrackers of all time, because eventually I called up Acme and I said, okay, what's the biggest thing you got? I go, what do you got? He goes, well, I've got a 4-foot by 1-foot tube.
Whoa.
And I had it sent to the house, and I wasn't even going to make it. I just wanted to see the tube because it was obscenely huge. It's 4 feet tall, right? And it's a foot wide. And my friend Jeff Gould, who was my right hand man in this whole thing, the guy that he basically was my second in command doing all this stuff. He goes, dude, I know a body shop down near Seattle that'll paint it for me. So he takes it away, and then a week later it comes back completely cherry red with a clear coat, the whole 9 yards. It was beautiful, right? And completely watertight. And we said, you know what? Let's call it the Alpha Omega.
I would have painted it white with a black top and called it the Hervé Veliches. But anyway,
nice. That's good.
Really obscure there.
That was a good one. What I did, but we didn't finish it. So I dumped it. That thing was ridiculous. In fact, I was never going to be able to sell it or do anything. It was just for personal whatever. It was the thing against Wayne. So I filled it with. It took 33 pounds of flash powder.
Wow.
To jam in that thing. And by the way, there was a moment, I got to mention this, where when I was making The Last Word, that 3-foot by the 3-foot one, because you can't put cardboard plugs in the end because there's no such thing as a cardboard plug that big. You have to use wooden dowel plugs. It's like 4-inch thick wood, circular plugs. And there was, because people said, weren't you worried? Didn't you ever get worried that you're going to blow yourself up? And in honesty, normally I do the macho thing, say, blow myself up. I'm invincible. But no, what I did was, but there was one moment when I was hammering in the end plug for The Last Word with a mallet, and it was sitting between my legs. And I'm just beating on this thing because, you have to, it takes, the friction. You can't get the wood plug in there. It takes, a lot of hits. And after about the 50th hit, I'm starting to break a sweat a little bit. And I'm going, this is one of the dumber things I've ever done in my life. I mean, it was not supremely stupid, but it was pretty bad.
You couldn't have wet the plug and then just let it swell or dry out, just to tap it in wet?
That's actually not a bad idea, but well, when we get to the end of this, you'll understand why, why that would have been a really, really bad idea. Chemically.
I know nothing about this.
Oh, no, it's totally cool. And yeah, I deliberately left you out of, we didn't rehearse this at all. I'm letting you catch the whole first reaction of why, how I made it through college, which is again amazing. So, okay. So here's what happens. So we finish the season, right? Well, so we make all the big stuff and we go to the reservations and we throw everything, we sell as much as stuff as we can. All the employees get paid. A couple girls, went on vacation to Europe, a couple, went on vacation across the United States, different semesters of tuition were paid off. All the employees got paid, and the investors got their money back. However, I had made an error in judgment, and that was, it turns out that the buying public, and I wasn't going to make this mistake twice, the buying public didn't want, because the reservations sell those 6-inch firecrackers for so much more money. They sell them for like $15, $20, that most people want the smaller stuff. The M80s, the M100s, the 2-inch crackers, the 3-inch crackers, because it's like, $3, $4 a pop. It doesn't, maybe $5, but it's easier on the wallet. So those sold out immediately. I sold those out within a couple days. Literally as fast as I could pull into the reservations, they were sold. But the 6-inch crackers took a lot longer because they were a higher ticket item at the reservations. And so basically what I had done was I had flooded the entire Western Washington market with 6-inch crackers. And I knew they were all mine because I put this little black and white ink stamp of an American flag on the side of my crackers. So I knew wherever I went, I hit every single stand that I could, and I had flooded the market. So basically I had, the point I was getting at is I had thousands of these 6-inch crackers left over at the end of the season that I couldn't sell. And now, of course, they're like anything, they're not going to go bad. So I figured, okay, well, I'll just throw these into dry storage. So
by the way, did they get more, not volatile, but more explosive if they're better cured or dried?
No. Flash powder is really no different than gunpowder. So, like ammunition, people don't understand that ammunition, because the powder that's in a brass casing, people are still using ammunition from the frickin' 60s. We've got well-documented cases of ammunition. People find their grandfather's gun from the 40s. That still fires. Basically, ammunition has no expiration date as long as the casing, stays intact. It isn't damaged. It's the powder stays forever.
Okay.
Yeah. So no, those fireworks were going to keep, and nothing was going to happen. They weren't going to get better. They weren't going to lose their potency or gain potency or anything like that. So I stuck them into a heated dry storage facility in the center of Bellingham. This nice elderly Christian couple that ran the place. They had no idea. All these boxes and all these college kids walking back and forth. All this stuff. And it was floor to ceiling. It was a lot. There were thousands of these things in there still left. And it was like, well, okay, well, I've still got those in there.
That would have been a good episode of Storage Wars.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch much TV, but
to find an entire room of illegal fireworks.
Right.
That would have been brilliant. So at that point, everybody was good. We put everything into dry storage, and I made enough money that I rented a house on Lake Whatcom 6 months in advance. Just paid it in cash. People weren't suspicious at all. For my buddies and I, basically, my right hand man Jeff Gould, my girlfriend, the Native American, and a couple other people, and we were just camping out there, and everything was great. On a side note, I have to mention this though, because the house that I was living on Garden Street up in Bellingham, Washington, the guy that took my place at that house, I have to mention this because his name's might come back around later if you look for it. His name was Jeff Kuhnauer, and it's spelled Coffenauer, Coff Enour. And the reason why I mention him is because small world. My sister briefly dated this guy. He kind of reminded me of you remember of what James Vanderbeek looks like?
Yes.
Yeah, he kind of looked like that.
Okay.
So kind of a big man on campus type of guy, good looking guy. My sister, briefly dated him, and he came in. He took my room when I left. Just wanted to mention this because it will come back later.
I have no idea where this story's going.
Yeah, it gets weirder. So, okay, so all we're doing is relaxing. It's the off season out in Lake Whatcom, and on top of that, you think life isn't going well enough as it is, because everything was going very, very smoothly. In fact, this is one of those movie things where everything was going kind of like the movie Blow with Johnny Depp. Everything was going great, right? To the point where Pablo Escobar, no, I'm sorry, the one of the lead tribal guys, hit me up and wanted an exclusive deal from the biggest reservation, fireworks wise.
Wow.
Wanted an exclusive deal with me that I would make the product on his location, and he would guarantee me, I don't know what it was, something like $50,000 for the summer, which was like, for a college kid, back then. It was
that's good money back then.
It was excellent money back then.
Yeah.
Especially for what I was going to be doing. Plus, I loved what I was doing. The old saying, which was, if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day again in your life.
And this is for just a few months worth of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, granted, it takes a little bit longer it scales. So, if you have to make 10,000 casings, you may have to start in May. If you have to make more than that, maybe you start in April.
But it's still not a 9-to-5 job. It's still not a mundane.
No. As long as you can hack the repetitiveness of it, then it's fine. And you just kind of zone out, play some music, and it's like, all right, make another casing. Plus, it's money. You're making things that immediately have monetary value. So there's this weird reinforcement. So you're kind of bored, but at the same time, you're looking in the box and you're just seeing just money. That's all you're doing. So everything's going great, and that's where, in any good story, that's where, the confidence is running high, and you think, nothing can go wrong. And that's when everything goes sideways. So here's what happened. So during the process, one of the 32 employees that I had working for me, her name, let's call her Lori. Now, her actual name was Lori, but, we're just going to use it. She worked for me, and I kind of had a thing for her as well. It's college. It's the same. There's a time and a place for everything, and that place is college. And so, yeah, I admit it, I was cheating on my girlfriend with this girl. And my girlfriend found out. My girlfriend said, look, I'm part of this operation, which means I have say over who gets hired and who gets fired. So I think we should fire this girl. And I said, okay. I think that's a bad idea. She was an East Coast girl, kind of gritty, kind of, had quite an attitude on her. And so I came to her and I said, hey, let's, we got to wrap this up. You can't work for me anymore. She goes, no, I'm counting on this money. And if you do this, and you know how people get, but she
Sure.
literally used the word, if you do this, I'm going to drop the dime on you.
Wow.
And for people who don't know that reference, that means literally putting the dime in the phone booth, because when phone booths cost a dime, and call the authorities, right? I'm going to rat you out. And I thought, she's never going to do it. But she did. We'll be back to talk about it.
No hype, no fear. We are TFR. Frequency Radio.
Doesn't say that we're on yet. We are now. Welcome back to Strange World. I'm Mark Sargent with my wingman, Jonathan. And we're talking fireworks. Last we left you, a female employee that used to work for me, Lori, about a month before we moved out to our cabin to relax in the off-season to Lake Whatcom, I was forced by my girlfriend Ashanti to terminate her employment. And Lori said, and like lots of people, it's, look, I'm gonna call the authorities on you. I was counting on that money for the summer. I was planning on making $1,000+ whatever, and I'm not gonna let you get away with it. And I didn't take her seriously. Why would I, right? So here's what happens. She calls the FBI. And I don't know this, right? This is a month, she calls the FBI literally that next day. And they ignore her entirely. They just, because a college girl calls up, so yeah, this guy's making illegal fireworks. They transfer her to the ATF, and the ATF, both agencies ignore her entirely. And so she doesn't know what to do, right? So a couple weeks go by, and she realizes I'm still around. I'm still walking around. And so she calls him again. And says, what's this guy still walking around campus for? He's making illegal fireworks, right? And she will not let it. Talk about determined. Hell hath no fury. Wow. But if there's not a truer example, I don't know what one is. So they say, okay, fine. And I only know this because the ATF told me this later. They're not supposed to tell me this, but there was some, backroom talks. And there was no way to pay her off or anything like that, just to give her something to keep her. Well, that's just it. I didn't think she'd do it. You think it's hyperbole, right? Nobody thinks you're going to do it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to rat you out, right? No, you're talking about a 18, 19-year-old girl in college. Really? They're going to They're going to call the FBI. They're going to call the ATF. No, it's never going to happen, right? So basically, I think it's in the phone book though. Back then we had phone books too. Remember, you could just look up all the government services. There it is, ATF. Thanks, man. You're making me feel so much better. In the white pages. Yeah. Right, go ahead. So she does, and so they said fine. So literally, from what I gathered from the agents, we'll call him Agent Smith. At this point, I'm not going to give you his real name. Because he's downstairs in this building right now. His name is Lewis. His name's Lewis, and we actually had lunch with him a couple days ago. So Agent Smith writes down my name, right? And just write, literally, that's all he does, is writes my name down on a piece of paper. And then and then he just goes on his way. Coincidentally enough, he busts a guy down near the Tulalip Reservation who is making fireworks out of tennis balls. And that's a perfect example of how flash powder works, because tennis balls are perfectly symmetrical. Therefore, and this guy worked at a country club, so he could use tennis balls all day long, and which are really, really great. So he'd fill those over with flash powder, and he got busted. And they asked him. They said, they just threw my name at him. They go, "Yeah, Mark, that kind of sounds familiar, right?" And they did, nothing really came of it, right? So they said, "Okay, where are you getting your chemicals from?" And they said, "Oh yeah, I'm getting the chemicals from this company down in Colorado called KSI." And if you guys are paying attention earlier in the story, that's the same place I was getting my chemicals from. Oh man! So the ATF goes down to Colorado. They travel from Seattle down to Denver, and they visit KSI. And my name still hasn't come up yet. And it was it's one of those weird Columbo moments. If everyone dates me, watches that old Columbo show where, he's just about, that's his hook. Whenever he was about to solve the case, he pretend like he didn't care anymore. He's just about to leave the room, and he turn around and say, "Oh, one more question. Can you explain the blood-soaked shirt and the smoking gun in the corner of the room?" That whole thing. And so that's what they did. They said they were just about to leave, and they say, "Oh, by the way, do you know a guy named Mark Sargent?" They said, "Do we? He just paid us $5,000 cash for a whole bunch of more chemicals for the next season." Right? And they said, "Oh, well, we're going to be taking that." So here's what happens. So what the ATF does in situations like that is they take the shipment. They don't let it get shipped by a normal trucking company. They literally get their own trucks. They ship it up to a warehouse. And so remember, I'm in the off season, right? So I'm not supposed to be doing anything. So I get a call like a month early from a warehouse down in Seattle. And they said, "Oh yeah, by the way, your chemicals are here. You got to pick them up because my boss doesn't want to keep them in the warehouse, blah, blah, blah." And I'm going, "Oh, this is inconvenient." So I said, because I didn't own a truck.
You didn't suspect anything at this point?
No, of course I didn't suspect anything. Why would I? Nothing had gone wrong at this point, right? Everything was happening in the background without my knowledge. So I borrow my grandparents' truck. It was like an old, like 63 International, a 63 Chevy A10. So it was a 3 on the tree. I didn't know how to drive a 3 on the tree. So I had to get my friend Jeff. He drove it for me. And we drive down to this warehouse in Seattle, and this guy in a fairly nice sweater helps me load the chemicals into the truck. And then we didn't know where to do with it because we need to get to our back up to the cabin. We weren't going to take it up to the house on the lake, so we drove it up to my mom's house on Whidbey Island and put it in her garage. Right. Huh. Little did we know that the entire time we were being tailed, by multiple cars from the ATF from Seattle all the way onto the ferry, off the ferry to my mom's house, and they were watching the entire thing with binoculars.
This is back in the day, by the way, when you could drink and drive legally, right? Also.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you were looking behind you, saying, "Where the hell is this funeral? Like, where are all these freaking cars going?"
Well, no, I thought they were like, well, not just that, but they were behind us on the ferry. Stationary cars, but we didn't know. Why would we think we were being tailed? So this is when it gets just wild. So here's what happened. So the ATF agents, and I'm not gonna pick on the ATF, mostly because they share the same building with you and me. But the ATF, here's what happens. They're watching it with binoculars. They know it's going to take a while to load the chemicals into the garage, right? So you know what they do? They say, "Oh, let's go have lunch." So they go down to a local cafe and have lunch, not knowing that I don't live there.
Oh my God.
Because my car was there, but we weren't in my car. We were in my grandparents' truck. So Jeff and I get in the truck and we drive 100 miles north back up to Bellingham, and we leave, right? So meanwhile, these guys come back with the binoculars. They don't see the truck anymore, but they see my car. And I was giving that car away to some kid down on the island. So it didn't matter anymore. That car was going to stay there. Basically, that car stayed there. They staked out my mom's house for 3 days.
Wow.
Okay. And you think, okay, right? That's got to end sometime, right? Because they're watching. I never come out of the house. So they think, okay, something's going on, right?
And I got to tell you something. I do video and photography, and this is painting such visuals in my head as you're telling this story. I'm picturing, you said you went across on a ferry first, and they were with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm picturing, like, here's the camera panned down, right? And here you are at the front of the boat, and there's all these, like, unmarked cars and guys with sunglasses, like, way on the other side of the boat. Like, they don't want to get too close to you.
Exactly.
And then you're, like, and you were traveling with a friend, you said?
Yeah, with my friend Jeff Gould. Yeah,
right. So your friend's sitting there, and and then pan camera in front, and you're in front of the hood of the car, and it's like, listen, I don't know, man, but I think these guys are tailing us. And you guys both look and look back, and then all these guys are like wearing sunglasses, like traditional agents, and they're all scratching their heads. They all turn around, at the same time, looking the other way as you're going across on this ferry. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no. That's exactly. Had we been more aware of our surroundings, we would have noticed this. But on top of that, so they had to stay in Langley, Washington, where my mom lived on Whidbey Island. They had to stake that place out for 3 days. So they were going downtown all the time for 3 days. And people, it's locals. It's about as small a town as you can get. And people knew full well these guys weren't, they were suits and sunglasses and the whole 9 yards. So, but nobody knew what they were there for. So here's where, unfortunately, my mom comes into the picture. And I'm sorry, Mom, because I know you're listening. But my mom, all of a sudden, all these cars show up at my mom's house on, I don't know what night it was. Let's call it a Wednesday night. And what was happening was my mom was having a church dinner party. with the pastor of the church, his wife, the county commissioner, his wife, my sister and her fiance at the time. And they're all there, and they all show up at the same time. Well, the ATF hasn't seen anything going on for 3 days. And so now it's like, oh my God, this is it. This is the moment, right? So you can imagine the dinner is already, it takes a while to organize a TAC team for something like this, because the TAC teams that, that we organize, it takes a few hours at least. So my mom gets a knock on the door after dinner, but before dessert. She opens the door, and it's just a wall of black uniforms and lasers. That's all it is. And the guy that helped me load the chemicals into the truck at the warehouse was sitting there in his sweater with a badge. And he goes, "Hey, does Mark live here?" And she goes, "Is Mark here?" And she goes, "No, Mark doesn't live here." And what do you think they're going to do? It's like, well, whatever. They come in, they secure the entire thing, they surround the entire dinner table.
Oh my God!
And they search the house for 20 minutes while my mom is trying to serve dessert. My mom does not break character in this case. She is serving dessert, pie, and ice cream.
And why should she? They didn't ask for her.
No, and she knows full well that I don't live there. She knows I'm not there, so she's completely off the hook, right?
Good for her.
That's absolutely right. And to the point where she was offering, God bless my mom, she was offering the agents pie and ice cream, and some of the rookies almost went for it.
Oh, that's like what's her name in Goodfellas when they're coming to search the house. She goes, "Would you like some coffee?"
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and they weren't allowed to take it. Even though she was, it was homemade pie. I'm sure it was delicious.
I'm sure their mouths were watering.
On top of that, they went and said, they said, they just idle chit chat. They asked the table, has anyone seen Mark? Right. Unfortunately, my sister's fiance's name is Mark.
Oh boy!
So he stands up. Goes, "I'm Mark."
Oh no!
And they go, "Get him!" So
they didn't even have a picture of you.
Well, that's just it. Only the lead guy had a picture, because I had no record to speak of. So they're dragging him out of the house, right? And the lead agent, because he's a Burt Reynolds looking guy with a mustache and dark hair, and the guy goes, "No, that's not. Put him back," right? So they put him, they let him go back to his seat, and after the 20 minutes, they go to my mom and they go, "Look. He's not here." And she goes, "I told you he's not here. He lives 100 miles away in Bellingham." Well, now they got problems because now it's a jurisdiction issue, because now they have to get a complete, new bench order from a judge and the whole 9 yards. So but there's a problem, and that is they're 100 miles away. What's to stop my mom from calling me and warning me, because it's going to take them 2 hours, and they don't. When federal stuff gets involved, they don't talk to local because they can't trust local in most cases. So they keep local out of it because you don't know who's related to who, and so they said, "Look, you can't call him. We're going to go up there." And she goes, and my mom being very savvy says, "All right, here's the deal." She goes, "I will draw you a map to his house because it's going to be very difficult for you to find him otherwise."
Oh man.
I know. Well, I did ruin her dinner party. But on that condition, she goes, "You go up there, you got to be nice. You've got to be, civil, and you can't go in, guns blazing and stuff like that." So they took the deal, and so sure enough, hours later, pushing midnight, up at Lake Whatcom, and I see these 3 sets of headlights driving down, because there's no street lights down this lake road.
So wait, she didn't give you a heads up then?
No, she didn't.
Oh, darn it.
Well, I don't know what I would have done if she would have. But all these headlights come down the road, and I'm looking outside my window. I'm looking at these headlights because they're all evenly spaced apart, and they all hit their blinkers at the same time. I was going, "Oh no. No, this is bad. So they come in or I should say they surround the house. They knock on the door and sure enough, who's at the door? And he was waiting to use this line, but Agent Smith. and he says, "Remember me?" It's like, oh, it's funny. You've been saving that for how many hours now? So, so he comes in and they go through the whole thing. But of course, we're storing almost nothing at the house. But my mom also told him where the dry storage locker was in downtown Bellingham.
Oh wow.
So they were busting that at the same time they were busting the house. And after a while, they just wrapped it up and they ignored my girlfriend entirely because she's a woman and apparently women don't commit crimes ever. Read me my rights, blah blah blah. Didn't cuff anybody. Talked to me about the permit, and then they just abruptly got up and left about 1:30 in the morning. And I was like, "Wait, where are you guys going?" It's like that Law and Order thing. Well, it's up to the DA. Now the DA will decide what to do. I was going, "That's it." He goes, "Well, don't leave the country or anything." It's like because it's a fireworks thing. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not like we're moving heroin, or anything like that. So that was it, and so they leave. And, I got no sleep that night. And then when I get up in the morning, my roommate is watching television. And he goes, "You might want to see this." I was going, "What?" And I'm looking at the TV, and it's a live shot of my house. The house I'm currently watching TV in. And I look out the window, and he goes, "Don't open the blinds too far." And there's a news truck filming the house that we're sitting in, and immediately the phone calls start coming.
Wow.
The phone calls, are from the reservations, because this is now being, all over Washington. And, did you get busted? Did you get busted? And it's like, no, I'm denying everything at this point. I'm trying not to freak out. But there was one call I did answer, and that was, remember one of my employees I told you, the guy who was making the really big firecrackers, his name was Wayne. He calls and he goes, "It's you, isn't it?" I go, yeah, it's me. He goes, "All right." He goes, you didn't name me, did you? And I go, "No, I haven't talked to, anybody about anything." He goes, "All right, I got to figure a way, He goes, "Do you think I could keep my stuff if I took it apart?" And I go, "What are you talking about?" Because he was always into the loophole thing.
Right.
And so he was like, because technically, this is back then, the rules have changed now. Technically, if you put the flash powder in one area and the casings in other, that's all it was. It was flash powder and casings. It wasn't anything.
Good point.
Yeah. So as he goes, "I'll think about it. I'll work on that." So I go, "Okay." So now, yeah, I'm going, okay, this is getting ugly. And I don't know what to do because the reservations don't trust me, and everybody's suspicious, and basically the band's going to break up at this point. So you think things are going bad, and then my mom calls a couple days later, as I'm already depressed, and she goes, "You need to come down here." I go, "What, to Whidbey, to the island?" And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "The ATF missed something." I go, "What are you talking about? They searched your place for, they were there for a long time. They took all the chemicals away." She goes, "No, there was something else in the garage they missed." I go, "What?" She goes, "That thing under the flag." You know what was underneath that flag?
I can just imagine.
The Alpha Omega.
Oh.
The biggest firecracker ever built. It was so big, it was sitting under a 1976 bicentennial flag. It looked like a piece of stovepipe. And they had no freaking idea. I wouldn't be talking to you now, I don't think, if they would have found that. And, especially after, 9/11 and all that stuff. So she goes, "You got to get rid of this thing." I go, "Are you kidding me? What? She goes, "I don't care how you get rid of it. You got to get rid of it." So I drive down, 11 o'clock at night, because it's a couple hours back down to Whidbey, and with my girlfriend Ashanti, and we grab this thing, because with the casing, I think it weighed like 50 something pounds.
Yeah, this is like picking up a fire hydrant, right? That's what
It's heavy, it's big, it's awkward, and plus, you at this point you're thinking that everybody's still watching you, but that's not the case. At that point, the ATF has already, they'd gone home. It was over. That nobody was watching you. And remember, local had no idea what was going on. They left local completely out of it. So I was going, okay, how do I get rid of this thing? And so I thought, okay, what do you do with anything that's a fire hazard? Well, you drown it. That's what you do. You jump, you throw it off a bridge. You throw it, you sink it. So I
No, wait a
drove.
minute. Wait. You could do that in full, like, you wouldn't want to light that fuse. You wouldn't want to take it out somewhere and just light it.
No. Where was I going to go?
I don't know.
It was so big that I had no idea what it could do.
That's what I mean. I mean, I just couldn't. I couldn't deal. My OCD would go nuts. Like I would just be like,
Well, I figured. Well, no, I mean, I figure if I drown it and just soak the powder, that's all I need to do.
Okay.
So I drove it out to a beach, Useless Bay Beach. It's actually Double Bluff Beach, and it was low tide, and the tide goes out pretty far out there. I'm literally wading out chest high with this thing over my, two hands over my head, carrying this thing in the water. Right, get out as far as I can. I chuck it into the drink. It sinks like a stone, because it's very, very heavy. And then I drive back to Bellingham, and nothing, and that was it. And I never had to worry about that thing again. I was going, whew, dodged, wiped my brow and said, dodged a bullet there. Right?
it would have been better. It would have been better if you put a little bit longer fuse on it, lit it, and then ran around looking for a place to throw it, like Batman from the Batman movie.
Oh yeah, like the 1960s Batman with Adam West. Absolutely.
Because that's the biggest. They're so exaggerated, those old style bombs.
Yeah, and you think that's the end of the Alpha Omega, right? 2 weeks later,
oh boy,
I get a call from my father, because we're talking about defense attorneys. What most parents talk about with their kids. Let's talk about public defenders and where we're going to go private or public on this. And we're talking, and he does that Columbo thing at the very end. I'm not kidding you. He's at the very end, and he goes, hey, before I let you go, I couldn't make this up if I tried. He goes, did you hear anything about that explosion that happened at Double Bluff Beach about 2 weeks ago?
What?
I go, and I'm going, what are you talking about? He goes, it's the weirdest thing. He goes, these beachcombers were walking on the beach, and out in the middle of the water, for no apparent reason, this bomb just went off. And he goes, it was a massive explosion. It broke windows in the houses, the beach houses. You could see the plume of smoke from 20 miles away. He goes, they thought it was like an old World War II torpedo or something. And he goes, do you know anything about that? I mean, honestly, he was asking me, like, even though he knew exactly what I had been doing for the last 10 years, is like, like I was completely innocent of it. I was going, no, I have no idea what you're talking about.
He wasn't being sarcastic.
No, he had no idea. So I call Mom, right? I call Mom and I ask her, Mom, what happened at Double Bluff Beach about 2 weeks ago? She goes, oh, it was the strangest thing. She goes, there was this explosion out there. She goes, but it was funny because we all thought it was the people that were protesting, because it was the last night ever in the history of Double Bluff Beach that you could spend the night at Double Bluff Beach. You couldn't spend the night there anymore.
Oh man!
And she goes. There's probably some hippies throwing, with dynamite or something like that. And my mom, the one that actually got raided, even she goes, why? You don't know anything about that, do you? And I was going, what? It's like, it's a coincidence that the same night you asked me to get rid of the biggest firecracker ever built.
So wait a minute, you think somebody threw, like she said, maybe
no,
I know
I know exactly what happened, and we got a minute 30, and I'll tell you what happened. What happened was, with that particular batch of powder, I spiked it with a very fine grain of magnesium. And you got to remember what I said.
No, wait. All right, go ahead. All right, I know where this is going.
And since the casing was painted at a body shop with a clear coat, it was completely watertight. So what was happening was, water was coming in one end, because I ripped one end off of it, and it was starting to make it was making it damp. And most people don't know, from a chemical standpoint, if you take powdered magnesium and put it on a table and take an eyedropper and put some water on it, there's a good chance that it'll spontaneously combust. And so 8 hours later, under probably 12, 15 feet of water, this thing went off. And it rocked the beach, and everybody was, and I just could not believe for the life, and unbelievably, nobody suspected a thing. Everybody thought it had nothing to do with me, even my own parents. And I to this day I just could not believe it. But it was an amazing thing. So
that must have been some show for those people celebrating that last day on the beach there.
Absolutely. All right, we've got going to break, and then one more segment after this, and we'll wrap this up. Hopefully, we'll definitely wrap up the fireworks story, and we'll come back with some other stuff too.
Hangar 18, your TFR Roundtable.
Saturdays on True Frequency Radio.
Welcome back to Strange World. I'm Mark Sargent with my friend Jonathan, and we're seeing if we can wrap up the longest fireworks story you've probably ever heard in your life. All right, so where did we end? With the Alpha Omega going off, scaring a lot of people, and then my parents not knowing what to do. So here's what happens. At this point, my father takes me down to Seattle sometime later. We can wrap this up pretty quick. My father takes me down to Seattle, and we're doing the public defender thing. And all of a sudden, I'm looking. We just happened to glance at Seattle. This is back, when newspapers were still newspapers. And the front page of the Seattle newspaper, there happened to be a story about front page, bottom section, about an explosion. You'd think it would be about the Alpha Omega, but it wasn't. It was about a house that exploded down in Puyallup. And I thought, well, that's kind of strange because that's where one of my employees, Wayne, lived. It was down in Puyallup. So I call around, and I talk to a couple friends. I think I talked to Wayne, and if Wayne's listening, if he hears this, I am so sorry I was a jerk to you, because I know that when you were in the hospital, the first question was, did you say anything about me to the feds? But here's what happened, and that was really callous of me. I should have never done that. But here's what happened. So Wayne thought he'd be clever, and he would remember how he said he wanted to take stuff apart? It's like, okay, I'll just salvage everything, and I'll put it back together later. That way I can get busted, and I still won't lose any money. So he had a friend of his who, in my opinion, was not very bright, take apart these 6-inch firecrackers one by one. So he was punching holes in the end of one of the thing, dumping the powder into a powder bucket, and then putting the casings off to a side, right? And you're thinking, oh, that sounds pretty logical, right? That might work. Well, the problem is he was punching the holes with a screwdriver.
Oh my God!
And that's metal. And so that's metal on metal, the powder's metal. And so sooner or later, it's, you're just rolling the dice. Eventually, the statistics say that you're going to get a spark. So, and again, you couldn't write this. So Wayne and Ardith are about to leave for lunch, right? And they're literally at the door. And they go back and look at him, and they say, hey, you're going to be done soon. And he goes, oh, yeah, be done real soon. As he's doing that, he punches, a hole, and, he pressed his luck one too many times. The firecracker in his hand goes off, which is, bad. That's bad in itself. But unfortunately, it didn't go off fully because it had one end opened. So that caught the powder bucket. So think of the biggest flash photography thing you've ever seen in your life.
Oh man.
So small explosion, big fireball that engulfs the entire room, blinds everybody temporarily. But unfortunately for them, that fireball lit every fuse that was on that table.
Oh wow.
And so it was like small explosion, big fireball, and then kaboom. And the whole, it was a ranch house, I think. And the whole house just, it was just wrecked. And all three of them ended up going to the hospital. And none of them died. I want a disclaimer there. None of them died. Fireworks, generally, they'll hurt you. But you've got to be, you guys do some really dumb things to kill you. But that was... It was horrible, and I felt really, really bad. But at the same time, I just couldn't help but think it's like, look, if you want to lesson kids, or there's people do dumb things when it comes to fireworks. If anyone has any doubt, go to YouTube and look up dumb fireworks thing or homemade fireworks. So you type in those two words and watch how many dumb things guys do with fireworks. It's horrible, awful stuff. Okay, so we're getting to the end here. So eventually. It takes the DA a year to move forward with the case, and in that time, I'm doing all sorts of other things. I'm living in Seattle, and I go in and I'm dealing with my public defender, and this is where it gets kind of fun. So she sits down with me, and this is fairly early in her career. She's actually pretty high profile now, and she goes, "Just want to let you know that the judge that's been assigned to your case." Oh, before I should preface this. Did you ever see Grosse Point Blank with John Cusack?
Yes.
Okay. You remember that? Remember the whole premise of it where he had those red folders, and he gets to the end of the movie, and he was holding on to that last red folder with the identity of who he was going to kill, and he opens it up and he goes, "Dumb frickin' luck," right?
Right.
So she goes, "The judge assigned to your case,
oh boy,
is Judge Kuhnauer." And I go, and there's this pause, right? I go, "Wait, John Kuhnauer?" She goes, and if you guys remember, you could go back in the story.
Yeah.
This was the father of Jeff Kuhnauer, the guy that ended up taking my place in my house on Garden Street, the guy that dated my sister. And his father, there's only 5 federal judges in the entire Northwest, and he was one of them. And I did not know this. And as a matter of fact, I go, "John Kuhnauer," I go, "Know him." I go, "He was at my last fireworks show on Useless Bay Beach."
Wow.
He may have actually contributed to the fireworks fund, because there's always a donation thing where people put in checks and cash and stuff like that. And she looks at me, and there's this weird, awkward moment where it's like, okay, what happens now? She goes, she sits down and she goes, "So what do you want to do?" I go, "Well, what happens?" She goes, "Well, I mean, because, I'm thinking one of two things could happen. Either, he goes in and, kind of gives me a wink and gives me preferential treatment.
Right.
Or he does, a Judge Smales from Caddyshack routine, where he goes, 'Danny, I've sent boys younger than you to the gas chamber.' Didn't want to do it. Felt like I owed it to them." One of those deals. And I'm going, I go, "You know what? Just ask him. Ask him if he wants to take it." And so sure enough, she asked him, and of course, no, he couldn't. I mean, my sister went to his house, for God's sakes. She wasn't going to, he wasn't going to take the case. And after that, another judge was reassigned, and things got a lot easier. And that was it. And then I got a slap on the wrist, and I got to move on with my life. And that, as they say, and of course, that's when the NSA approached me, and I started my career up with the Department of Defense. So
I was wondering how that came about.
Yeah, it started when I was in my mid-20s. Was part. No, of course not. No, the penalties, the penalties for fireworks. You got to remember, early in the story, I did the homework on this, and the penalties for illegal fireworks, first-time offenders, is very, very light. Second-time offenders, however, though, they don't give you much breathing room, because it's a lot of effort, and you can't play dumb twice. So, and I was just a dumb kid at the time. But so yeah, I do. Does this fit into the truth is often stranger than fiction story? Yes, I think it absolutely applies, and it's entertaining to boot, because I could not make up a story like that. What I just told you. So there you have it. What do you think?
I don't, dude. I don't even know what to say, because I thought,
Wasn't what you were expecting, was it?
no, not at all. I'm just, we were talking about flat Earth one minute, and now I'm talking about fireworks.
Yeah. But I mean, it's one of those things where the loops have been closed. Like they made powdered aluminum really kind of a class 3 controlled substance. Same thing with potassium chlorate and potassium nitrate. It's way tougher to make that stuff nowadays. It's just not the same. So it's not like I'm doing an instructional, it's like, hey, how do I make money on illegal fireworks? You just can't do it anymore. But there was a time when, it was quite something to do. And, honestly, I was so fortunate and thanked God that I made it as far as I did. I mean, yeah, I could have hurt myself. I could have been in jail or prison and all that other stuff.
And you did mostly fireworks instead, not rockets per se.
No, it was no. I could have made rockets, could have made it, but it wasn't. The cost of making the loud stuff, the booms, was way more effective, way more efficient.
But with that, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, does one, because I'm trying to understand this, does one, is it more dangerous? I don't know. You know how you have like different classes and then different misdemeanors? I know with rockets when we were kids, if you went for a certain size rocket, I don't know if you needed an adult, but they wouldn't sell it to you. Like you had class A, class C. So if you were to design a rocket, that's different than designing an explosive, right? One blows up, one just expels.
Yeah. In fact, I don't even know if the ATF would be brought in on something like that. Because
I guess that's what I'm asking. Yeah.
No. Usually that stuff is local. So if you build a rocket and you shoot it off at something, it's usually the local cops will get involved. But when it comes to the feds, they keep. Let's put it this way: when they get involved, they don't involve local. At any level, just because they can't, because they're afraid of that whole Dukes of Hazzard scenario,
okay,
where somebody's cousin, and that happens a lot. Every sheriff's department, somebody knows somebody, and you don't want anybody tipping off anybody. So I felt bad for the local police which were only like 3 blocks from my mom's house. They knew nothing. All they knew was, because the feds have a certain disdain for local law enforcement in some cases, and they were like, they go up there, hey, what are you guys doing? It's like, get out of here. We don't want to talk to you. So yeah, that was my thing, and it was an interesting time, and I'm glad I did it. But
so I thought maybe you were telling us that story because you were going to now tell us. Actually, I'm in talks with David Adair and Robert Bigelow and Richard Branson, and we're going to build a rocket to finally get to the moon or something, to get off this flat Earth. Just throw in all the conspiracies.
I should probably segue back into the flat Earth just to let people know that I haven't completely abandoned it. I just really want to get this story out there because I have enough people that said, look, you've got to get this on the record. And so I just took my time and I wanted to make sure I was on there. But we got 14 minutes left, so let us, you and I, let's talk about flat Earth stuff for just a few, and let's talk about that identity thing. I'll do mine first, which was the there's 2 identity things, because I've been called, and I know I've been joking a lot during the show about which office we're actually broadcasting out of, and how many years that John's been on the agency payroll with me. But the truth is
I need money. I wish I was getting a paycheck right now.
I know. That's the thing.
For all the trouble, if I'm going to be called something.
I know. If I'm going to be, I've been doing the shill label thing for a while now, and not that long, but a while. And there's been certain. I don't mind doing the shill label. I get that. That's natural. It's going to happen. Either with popularity or with rivals. It's going to happen. But what I don't like is the identity thing. So there was a guy that had put out a video recently, and you can go about yours in a minute. His name was Cesar, and Cesar immediately he did a search, and it was weird. He did a search for every, across YouTube, and found a video, or Google, I think, and found a video of a guy named Mark Sargent in Boston who was going through, I believe, a child custody case. Was that what it was?
Yeah, and you know what's funny, by the way? I got to say this right now. I still got to reach out to that guy. I've never met a Mark Sargent in my life, and now I'm going to wind up knowing two, because what he was doing is actually related to an aspect of my life. But go ahead. Yeah, I just thought it was a weird coincidence.
Yeah, so Cesar picks up this thing, and so when you're in Boston, you're doing child custody things, it's recorded in the court. They have a camera facing you. And, you're in front of a microphone pleading your case, blah, blah, blah. And he compares it with some of the footage that I was doing on some of the interviews. And he was saying, he was doing like a split screen going, obviously the same guy. going, and it's like, he's got to be a total shill. I'm just going, what are you talking about? One, it doesn't even look anything like me. The only thing, that you could say we were similar was because we were white. The rest of it was, he had a family. He was in Boston. I've never been married. I never lived in Boston. I live in Colorado, in this multi-office building, in the Federal Center of Denver. And and eventually he had enough people badgering him that he retracted. At least he took the guy out of the video, but he didn't take the video down. He still said that Mark was a shill. But then you ran into a guy.
Oh man.
You ran into a guy that was going off my voice.
Yeah, and I listened to it, and I started searching it out, and I found out that I guess Microsoft or whoever had hired that guy on Comedy Central, Key and Peele or something.
Oh yeah. For the Halo, yeah, because he had what he had done was he had downloaded the Halo 5 audio trailer.
And I have to say, he did have a similar cadence, like your voice and cadence, the way you speak when you do your videos.
Yeah.
Because my wife looked up at me and she goes, "Is that Mark?" And I was like, "It sounds," but from across the room.
Oh, I admit it. Absolutely, it did sound like me, no question.
Yeah.
But the thing was, it had nothing to do with anything. It was a video game trailer. And so this guy was saying, okay, Mark is actually not Mark. He's a Hollywood actor. But and you could look this up in IMDb. The guy that did the voiceover was Michael Key. I think it was Michael Key. I can't remember his full name.
Right.
From Key and Peele, the comedy show on Comedy Central. And it's posted on his Twitter account, on his IMDb. It's common knowledge, right? And so you put to him that that it was Key.
Yeah, I did it in a polite way. I was just like, I hate to break it to you, but and I gave him the links. I wasn't calling him out or mocking him in any way, because not for nothing. I mean, I've been on the internet as long as anybody else. I'm a computer guru, guy myself. And it's unfortunate. You can say something as nicely and as concise and have no intention behind it whatsoever except to be polite. And depending on where people are coming from, they read into it and take it as an act of aggression because you dare to debate them or say, excuse me, but I think you made a mistake. And next thing I know, I think he made a video about me too, searching my channel. And I think I called you on this. I said, dude, you're not going to believe this. And you're like, you know what? That's when you asked me this week. You're like, do you want to come on air with me? Because I'm going to do this thing. I'm just like, the hell with it at this point. If I'm going to get called out, I'm really like, I walked in the middle of this. Anyway, we haven't even talked about a flat earth yet. When do we start talking about that?
Yeah. We won't be able to do it today, but or not much anyway. But yeah, what I liked about that guy was, I gotta give him respect in this capacity, and that was even when people went to him and said, "Look, there's all sorts of documentation saying that it was actually a Hollywood actor that did, why, of course, that would do the voiceover for this Microsoft game, right?" And he still wouldn't back down, to the point where he said, "No, Mark isn't really Mark. Mark is actually an alias for Michael Key." And that I was just floored. I was going, "You have got to be kidding me. It is not possible." It is to the point where, he wouldn't, to the point where he was saying, I think it was in one of your comments where he said, "Until I see Key and Mark Sargent in the same room," this
is like the Clark Kent Superman paradox. Until I see them standing next to each other.
Yeah. It's like, what do you kidding? And I think you put to the thing, I gave you the ammunition, which was, that's a great theory, except that I've done Skype interviews,
right,
and not just one. I've done several Skype interviews. It's right. Like, okay, that would mean that I would do the Skype interview, and then he would actually dub over my voice in post-production afterwards, and he was like, "Oh," he goes, "That's totally doable." And it's like, but why?
Who has time for that?
Why would I do it? Plus, it doesn't mean anything, you know. But yeah, he actually didn't believe that I was a real guy.
I got to say something too that's been bugging me, and I've discussed this with you.
Sure.
Whether it's the topics, and I guess going weeks forward, if you're going to talk about the flat earth,
we will. Absolutely, we will. Yeah.
Whether it's that topic or any other, I think there's so many well-intentioned, good people, genuinely good people who have a certain passion to find the truth.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we mean a lot of the same things, but some people can be coming from a more emotional standpoint. Other people can be coming from a purely scientific standpoint. Yeah. Some people are just lay people, just like myself, just stepping into it for the first time. And it's like if you pick the wrong word, there's a group of like purists in every group, every clique or whatever becomes of these different outlets. If you use the wrong word, all of a sudden you gotta get like beaten down or like no, you know, and you're told not so much what to think, but you're corrected. Yeah. Or then it becomes political, and then which faction do you join? The Judean People's Front or the People's Front of Judea? Like but I almost imagine that if everybody just got along and came together, it still would be this. I hate to say it this way, and you used to run a comic book store, right? You used to own one?
Yeah, years ago.
Oh, you'll appreciate this. I kind of picture it as like, almost like the Justice League coming together, but it would be the bizarro version of the Justice League with Solomon Grundy and Mixelplix. It would just be a mess.
Yeah. You know? I feel bad sometimes because I don't fall into this category, and this is not me doing the high horse thing or anything like that, but from the conspiracy standpoint, the conspiracy crowd has a notorious habit of, and it's part of the reason why they're good at what they do, is that they're naturally suspicious. And of everything and everyone, but there's no guidebook. There's no rules for where you draw the line there. So yeah, they're suspicious of the government. They're suspicious of secret societies and big groups and royalty and rich people, but there's no lines drawn. So because even amongst themselves, so there's tons of infighting, and it turns into that. I think I've mentioned this to you before. You remember that old Twilight Zone episode, The Monsters Are on Elm Street?
Oh, yeah.
Where a brilliant episode that was written about how people in a neighborhood, when they got suspicious of each other, turned very, very quickly. And these are people that known each other their entire lives. And it was amazing how fast people would turn.
And not to give, I feel like you should give the spoiler for people who didn't see that episode.
Yeah,
it was just two aliens, I think, who were just flicking on light switches and making cars or things go on and off. And the one guy turned to the other guy at the end. I remember he goes, "Look at this." He goes, "All we had to do was turn on a few lights, and they immediately go at each other." He goes, they knew each other. It was like a cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
and these neighbors knew each other, and they just lost it.
Yeah. There's it's again, it's that suspicion. It's amazing how quickly I don't. Again, I'm not going to end this on a bad note.
No,
but the witch hunt. The whole idea is like we don't burn witches anymore. Yeah, but we used to. And that mentality isn't entirely there, or isn't entirely gone. And I feel, I hope that eventually, not just people in the circles that I'm in, but I hope that other conspiracy people really should be a little more open minded. It's like, look, don't condemn everybody just because of your personal bias. Don't hold on to your beliefs so tightly that everybody else is immediately against you. That's where I think it's like, well, if you don't believe in my thing, if you don't follow exactly what I follow, then you're obviously my enemy, and not just an enemy, a vicious enemy, and someone I should actively attack. And it's like, no, don't do that.
And I got to say something. I think it's kind of brilliant the way you shared an aspect of your life, a part of your life, because we all have a history, we all have a past, without just jumping into the whole flat Earth theory and here's what I think kind of thing.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that scene again from Dances with Wolves when he starts to talk to the native elder, and the woman stops him and says, "Wait a minute, he needs to know your name." And he's like, "Oh, you're right. You have to have." You should introduce yourself first, and we have a tendency in our society now to just start talking at people.
Oh yeah. Which is part of the reason I did this story. You know, it's a pretty entertaining story, but it also gives you some transparency into my life. You know, if you think that is a made up backstory, well, then I should be working for Hollywood and making a ton of money writing screenplays, because I don't know anybody that can make up that just out of nowhere. But I do believe in transparency. It's like, look, I've been accused of, you know, all sorts, even though no one's actually said what agency I work for. It's the DOD, by the way. You know, we're in a 10-story building and John's on like the 3rd floor. But I do not work for the FBI, the CIA, the DOD, the ATF, Homeland,
DOE.
Yeah, there's no alphabet group that I work for, even though, yes, I live in Boulder, Colorado. But people got to remember that Colorado literally is the backup for the nation's capital. So if the East Coast and the West Coast get hit by a tsunami, Denver becomes the capital of the United States. A lot of
Mark Sargent retains his job.
Exactly. That's why I requested to be stationed here.
And I should say that again, I haven't talked about my own past or anything, but I did telecommunications. I lived a normal life for the most part.
Yeah.
I was interested in conspiracy theories of all different sorts, because a lot of the things are entertaining to me on one level, but on another, there's very important questions that are asked. It's not so much can you prove this as much as you can say, you know, can you not prove this? Because I think you do that with the flat Earth. But I have connections in Hollywood, and right now I'm even making a triangle over my eye, but you can't see it because we're not on video Skype like I thought we were going to be.
That reminds me. And thank you for bringing that up, because so people have told me, you know, a couple of the interviews, viewers, because I was doing the Skype thing with a globe in my hand, and people are saying, you know, some people are saying, well, he's doing the globe because he wants to promote the globe model, but some of the interviewers were actually saying, you get rid of the globe because you've already done it. It's already been it's played out. So I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I held my fingers together just below camera. And one of the first guys almost immediately says, he goes, "Nice pyramid, Illuminati shell."
Oh my God.
It's like, what was I supposed to? I honestly didn't think of it. It was like holding your fingers. I wasn't trying to hold my fingers like, you know, like an evil genius, like a Dr. Evil or anything like that. But anyway.
There's so many ways you can read into things, I'll tell you.
Yeah, I agree. So we're gonna do one more quick break, and I think we're gonna come back with some parting shots if we got them, and then we'll wrap this show up and think about what's gonna happen next week. And the music should be cueing just about now, right?
5, 4,
3,
2. There it is.
Oh, maybe this is the end. If it is, then goodbye, everybody. Thanks for listening to Strange World.
Thank you, Mark.